Welcome to the Manufacturing Matters podcast with the Council of Industry. Join us as we bring you inspiring stories, interviews, and insights from across the Hudson Valley that will revolutionize the way you think about manufacturing. This podcast is proudly sponsored by PKF O'Connor Davies, a leading accounting and advisory firm dedicated to helping businesses thrive in the manufacturing sector. With their industry knowledge and strategic guidance, PKF O'Connor Davies ensures that manufacturers have the financial insights and support they need to achieve success.
Dr. Allison Buckley, thank you so much for joining the Council of Industry podcast.
I am thrilled to be here this morning.
When we got the news about the new programs at SUNY and the SUNY Reconnect, you were actually one of the first people we wanted to reach out to. We wanted to hear a little bit more about that and just everything that's great that's happening at SUNY Ulster. You know that we're big fans. But let's start a little bit with your background, your personal journey. How did you end up being the president of SUNY Ulster?
Okay, so I'm not a New York native. I grew up outside Philadelphia.
Okay.
And, I look back on it now. And when I talk to my friends from college, I kind of laugh, like I didn't want to graduate from college. And maybe that was a sign that I was going to stay forever in different ways. So I started my career teaching. I taught labor history. I looked at I studied trade unions for women in Ireland in the early 20th century. But there weren't tons of jobs for historians. So I kind of
surprised by that.
I know. It was a rude awakening. And so I left that for a little bit and I worked for a medical software company, which is about as far away as I can.
Yeah. They look at your resume and say labor history for women in Ireland? Absolutely.
Absolutely. The CIO, he was a really interesting guy and I think he took a gamble on me. And I did that. So I worked in IT. But I really missed education. And I came back to it first through, I worked for an e-learning startup back in the .com, at the tail end of that. And then I ended up from there going back, I worked at the University of Pennsylvania at Wharton Business School. And I used to always joke, I'm a labor historian. Hating the man. And I stayed in graduate education and primarily business education. And I went back to school. I got my MBA. And I love that. But I really miss teaching. And I started teaching at the Community College of Philadelphia. And I had this class. And it was, I was teaching women's history. And I had in this class, like everything from someone who was in his late 80s to students who had just graduated from high school in West Philadelphia. And it was this incredibly eclectic group of students. And I can still remember, like it was yesterday, like standing in that classroom and saying, this is what I want to do.
Wow.
But it was really hard to get a full-time. By that point, I was really in higher ed administration, and it was very hard to get a job at a community college in administration. They were like, you don't understand our students. Like, no, this is what I want to do. So it took me, and then I
guess I do. I do understand.
I do. And I came back, and then I worked in administration. I had a wonderful boss, and I think so critical for so many, and I hadn't really thought of it. She said to me one day, have you thought about being a college president? Wow. And I did. And I was like, maybe. And so went back to school again. And I finished my doctorate. And that's how I became a college president. So I just love the community college mission more than any other. The fact that it is part of a community, that we meet all students where they are, that it really, community colleges, now I am going to sound like a historian and historian, but they came out of really the post-World War II drive for, if we're going to fight what happened in Europe in World War II, if democracy is going to thrive, you actually need everyone to have an education. So there was this linking of democracy and education for all people where they are. It doesn't just have to be a university. So, and then I ended up in the beautiful Hudson Valley. I was looking, and this, when Ulster was searching, it popped up. And I said to my husband, what do you think about the Hudson Valley? We had sort of a geographic areas that we were considering. And he was like, his first job when he finished grad school was actually at Vassar. So it's kind of coming full circle. We're on the other side of the river. So it's great. We love it.
Well, that's kind of serendipitous, because you didn't even have to explain where the Hudson Valley was.
No, but he sometimes laughs, and I'm going to show a little bias here, that had he spent more time on this side of the river, he probably would have never left the area.
Right. No, that's great. No, that's really great. I actually want to ask you, if you don't mind, a follow-up question to your career path, because I think sometimes when people are in the path, when they're in the thick of it, there's all the second guessing and the uncertainty and all those things. So at each of these fork in the roads, were you as, comfortable and optimistic as you seem now? Or was there a bit of a like, oh no, if this type of, if I was going into this historian role and there's not a lot of opportunities, was it, yay, I've got this? Or
well, I think that was the hardest one. Because something like that, when you're working on a PhD, it becomes so personal and so all-consuming. I think that one was really difficult, and I was a little burned out. I had written my dissertation for I had done an MPhil at Trinity College Dublin, and I had just been working a lot, and I was burned out. That one I think was hard, and I was like, maybe I just need to do something completely different.
Okay.
And when I went to work for Siemens, and then it was like, well, wait, no, I think after that, it was like the threads that I love, I found in others. And that's how like the pieces then fit together, because if you were designing that, it's probably not a great design from start to end. But that first one was really tough. But then after that, it's like, well, wait a minute, I can find what I love in different ways. And so then you like zero in. And for me, it became the sector. Like it helped me really focus on the sector that I want to be in, and the mission. And I think once you have those things, it makes it easier to navigate. But that first transition was hard, because it's like, what do I do now, kind of thing.
And sometimes you're tying your identity to that. Right. And it's not just like, this path isn't the way I saw it. It is, I am not whatever, fill in the blank of that piece.
And I think maybe also, as I was in my 20s, and I think a lot of it, and it's not true, but it certainly looks like in your peer groups that everybody has everything figured out at 26, which none of us did. But it was like, how come I don't? Or and it's competitive. That's one of the challenges with academia. But so, and then I think it's translating, and it's something that when I talk to students, when you face, just thinking about, there's still ways to do what you love, but maybe in different ways.
Find the thread, find the mission, find the similarities instead of, focusing so deeply on all the differences. Like this is a totally
Yeah.
different way. That's great. So that actually kind of ties into one of my thoughts, and you mentioned about all the different types of students that you get to intersect with at a community college level. So there are probably students who are, deeply tied to something and
Yep.
facing burnout and, worried about what doesn't happen. And then there are other students at the community college level that are just so fearful of schooling in general, of just having to even tackle that. They don't even know what they don't know, and they're coming so open.
I think, one of the things um, in higher ed, particularly for first generation students, is it does seem kind of cloaked
Hmm.
in language and stuff. And if you don't know, how do we make it accessible?
Yeah.
And community colleges have from the outset been about access and
Hmm.
making it possible and thinking about ways, you don't need to have all the answers. You can figure it out as you go, and we're here to help you. I mean, it's everything from students who know they want to transfer and study
Yeah.
some history and do this to students who are, I don't know, but I want to get a job
Yeah.
and live a good life. And that's part of our mission as well. And like, we'll help you figure it out. And there are a lot of different ways. And if you're not exposed to good jobs, I mean, when I was in before we came to New York, I was in Connecticut. And it was really interesting because I community college, you see a lot of students who say, I want to do nursing.
Hmm.
It's a good job, clear pathway. If you are a first generation student,
Yeah.
that's what I know. And when you ask the students, well, why nursing? Well, I want a good job. I want to be able to have
Mm.
a flexible schedule. Shift work would be ideal because I have kids or I take care of a parent. And I've actually, when we were in Connecticut, we did a lot of conversations with students. Well, there are other careers other than nursing, and like
Right.
manufacturing is a great
Right.
example.
Yeah.
And our manufacturing programs started seeing much higher numbers of women coming
Yeah.
in
Absolutely.
for that very reason. And it's like, oh, I never thought of
Mm.
of that. And it's the same, flexibility, good salaries.
Yeah.
Uh,
Consistent hours,
yeah,
benefits, all those
like
pieces of the puzzle.
schedule.
And I think, we know nurses because we see them, right? And we hear about that. And I think sometimes at first generation students also hear someone said this is a
Yeah,
good job. Someone told me that, this is a
yeah.
good program. And that might be true, and that might be exactly what you want to do. But also maybe you don't need to do the nursing path and also handle the things that nurses handle, which is
Yeah, and a lot of
may
people
not
don't
be
want to
perfect.
do the nursing
The
part.
nursing part, right? The actual
And,
blood and
so
things.
there are other ways, and that's, I dig in. I worked one of my mentees, I should say. Um, she was a first generation student, and nursing was a job. Uh,
Hmm.
but when she started taking anatomy and physiology, she really hated it. I was like, there are
Yeah.
other good jobs out there, so let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's look at what you're good at.
Yeah.
Let's lean into the strengths instead of trying to always focus on mitigating where you have gaps. Like, it'll be a lot easier. Life
Yeah.
will be better. You'll be happier when you're leaning into those strengths.
Yeah, find the thread. And I think you mentioned that the community colleges are focused on access. And I think that's huge because, if you're afraid to ask, which we are afraid to
Yeah,
ask, you feel overwhelmed that everybody has it figured out, and the community college gives you those access points, whether it's non-credit or supplemental, all the pathways. Obviously,
yeah.
this better than I do, but it does give that point of access. And I know that you have a really great manufacturing program, but can you just talk a little bit more about all the different ways that a student at any age can intersect with the college and how there's the connection there.
So, and it really is about building those blocks. And I think access is key and making sure that higher ed is affordable. But we also want to, at SUNY Ulster, we're really focused on how we integrate with people's lives so you don't have to choose. So you can go to school for a time, but if you have to stop out because something's going on at work, like there's a big project that's due, you're going to have to sit out the spring semester, but that you can come back and keep going. And so it is whether you start doing something in non-credit education, like certified nursing assistant, but that could lead into, and those courses can get you on a pathway where you may end up, if not a nurse, you could be working in a medical office. And so really trying to package. So, I do believe education's never wasted, but how to help our students see how these little pieces along the way, these intermediary milestones are really getting you somewhere.
I think that ties to what you said about your own threads, right? Like there was a thread that ended up weaving this beautiful quilt, but at the time it was just a thread and maybe a step back and refocusing on some of those things. One of the things I like, and I say this any chance I get to talk about SUNY Ulster and the partnerships that we've had there, is whenever we're interfacing, the answer is always yes. Like, it's fascinating to me. It really is. Like, it's like, yes, we'll figure this out. And, sometimes it's a time period of figuring it out. Sometimes it's a version of what we went with. And then oftentimes that we get to do that in reverse, where, maybe Barbara or Chris, somebody would come to us and say, what about this? And we're like, we'll figure it out. So in terms of partnerships and workforce development, I think it feels like you're at the front of those conversations. How do you see that as a part of the role in the community college space?
So it's always been what community colleges did well. It was about workforce. I mean, I did talk a little bit about post-World War II economics, but a lot of it was like, it's funny. When I came here, and I was looking and being a historian, kind of looking at why was SUNY Ulster founded, what was behind that, and what was driving it at the time was IBM announced they were going to be putting their facility in Kingston. And it was this public conversation, like, we've got to make sure we have a workforce for IBM. And so from the very earliest days, like, that's like deep in the DNA, it was those conversations. We are here to provide employers with the workforce they need. And so even though IBM is not here, that is still there. And as we look at, especially now in a period where I think there is change in what people are looking for, and when you're having conversations, and what is AI doing, and what are the skills that we're there to have those conversations about. What do you need? How can we tweak the programs? Community colleges can be comparatively very nimble. I mean, we're still higher education.
Yeah, sure. There's still some structure around that.
Yeah, they're structure, but comparatively, we get to be much more nimble because we always have. And then kind of that entrepreneurial, I like to think we're scrappers and finding out the way to do it. So I think it's just like, it's a part of who we are. And being part of those conversations and hearing from employers, from everything, when I talk to folks about teamwork, soft skills, critical thinking, and how we bring those to the forefront in the courses to make sure that our students are ready to contribute and succeed, because that's really what it's all about.
Yeah. And I mean, most of the people that intersect with the community college are likely to stay or report back to the community. So, I mean, that investment
90% of our alumni, I think, are right here in Ulster County.
Yeah.
So,
And that's great.
and it's so wonderful. Like when I am here and out and about, if I'm wearing SUNY Ulster gear, like I am always stopped. And it's, I went to Ulster, my kids went to Ulster, my mom went to Ulster.
Yeah.
My mom went to Ulster as a non-traditional student, and I remember I was in elementary school and I would come with her to class. I mean, those
Yeah.
are the stories going back to those days in the 60s and 70s that I love.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so if you want to have a conversation, I can't wear Ulster gear when I'm out
yeah,
there.
I was just gonna say, getting signatures and and then all of those, people are providing the community that we want to live in, the way
Yeah,
we love to live here, and they're the ones that are executing that for us. So all those
yeah.
experiences that you have and you look for in a town or a community or village, it all kind of continues to evolve. I'm a fan.
Yeah,
Um,
it's why I've got the best job in the world. I will
yeah.
say to anybody.
Oh, I actually am not going to disagree because I do think that that's probably true. I know that there's also very difficult times, and the pandemic wasn't fun for anybody. So I know
So,
that those things, but right now there's a lot of really good things ahead. So
yeah,
I wanted to talk a little bit about SUNY Reconnect. I found out about this through Barbara Rear. She had called me and said this is coming in the pipeline. We had heard a little bit about it, and she reached out and said, I think your apprentices are going to be eligible for some of these things, and how can we get ahead and get the information out there. And personally, as somebody who that went back as an adult learner, this is a game
yeah.
changer, no brainer, probably the best idea ever. And tell me more.
So SUNY Reconnect is really looking at those New Yorkers. And so in Ulster County, it's about 68,000 of our ballpark 170 uh, don't have a post high school credential.
Mm-hmm.
So SUNY Reconnect, if you are 25 to 50 and don't have a college degree,
Mm-hmm.
you can return to Ulster tuition free in high demand fields. So it
Right.
is IT, manufacturing, healthcare, education, engineering. Oh, goodness gracious, I feel
I
like
know.
that one. Um, and it really is tuition free.
That's great.
So let's say you started college, but you never finished.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to come back, and you don't have to worry about the cost. And I think particularly once you're over 25 and there are other demands, whether it is families and children and jobs, to have that burden removed. Because,
Yeah.
when I went back to grad school, I was a non-traditional student and I was working
Mm-hmm.
full time. And I think it is that piece is done. I always say
Yeah.
there's never going to be a great time,
Mm.
so go now,
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
you'll always come up with a reason not to.
Yeah.
And this kind of takes out the most important one.
Yeah.
So, it's not going to be less busy or less chaotic in
Absolutely.
a year. So might as well just bite the bullet. And once you start, um, you figure out, you get in the groove and you go
Right.
through it. And then when you're done, you're like, how did I have the time to do that?
Yeah.
But I think that's the really, it's a game changer. And it's designed so that you can put this degree to work
Yeah.
right away.
Right. Absolutely. I remember chatting with you offline, and I felt like it was such a silly question, but I loved your answer. So I was just like, oh, all these non-traditional learners, and how is the college going to need to change or adapt to accommodate these individuals who haven't been in the system? And I was thinking I was so profound, and you were just like, yeah, that's exactly what we've always been doing, right?
I mean, like we've been doing it. I think our graduating class, we had this year's graduating class ranged in age from, I think it was like 17 and 18 to in their 60s. I mean,
Yeah.
it's there. I do think there are ways, and I say to the team here that we can get better by learning about, when I went to grad school, it was all scheduled out. So
Mm-hmm.
when I went for my MBA, they were like, you are taking these classes and this is when you're taking them through the whole thing. Go ahead and plan
Yeah.
it. Like I had no choice.
Right.
It
You knew what you
wasn't,
knew for the next period of
I
time.
knew
These were the
the
days
next
and
2 years
times. Yeah.
what was happening and when, and I didn't have to like register. It was just all taken care of.
Yeah.
And I think, at the time, I was like, well, I don't want to take advanced finance. I'd like to do market. And they were like,
Yeah.
nope, this is how we're going to get you through.
Yeah.
And you're going to take advanced finance. So
Yeah.
glad I
Okay.
did now, but
That,
not
of
happy
course.
then.
Yeah.
And so I think there are those things that we can do because too often, we're still operating on that model of semesters, which really doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. But we're getting better at that. And I
Yeah.
and this is where things like the apprenticeships and the non-credit have helped us keep that momentum going.
Yeah.
And when you sacrifice some of those choices, you get through faster.
Yeah. I think that makes sense too, because part of the anxiety is what day and time is this class going
Yeah,
to be, and next semester it's this. And I did my and I remember for my last semester at SUNY Orange, the last 2 semesters, the only availability were times that were really not ideal.
yeah,
And I had an employer who said, we're going to get you to the finish line, it's okay. But some people are just going to get 2 semesters away and say, I can't do that. But if they
yeah. No,
knew when they were registering, this is kind of the way it's going to look on the horizon, then they could plan for that in advance, and that would be more consistent. That's a great idea.
and I think one of the benefits of being a smaller institution, which is part of the reason I fell in love with Ulster, is
Hmm.
it's much like your advisors know the story and they know the reason,
Hmm.
and we can figure out a way, even if you had a job that couldn't
Right.
move things around, when you're not a number and we know you're that close, we
Yeah.
can, as you said earlier, it's like, well, we're going to figure out a way to do this.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's one of the things that I love about Ulster is like, who people are, your faculty members, you're in small classes. Um, Downside is it's hard to hide, but the good
Yeah.
side is that you've got a whole team that really has hands on your back to get you over a finish line.
Yeah.
Uh, and
And
so
and
I
there's a
think it's,
culture that welcomes vulnerability and questions,
yeah,
and can you help me get through this?
yeah,
There's a culture of that across the board,
yeah.
which
There
still
are
requires
no
their in
questions.
yeah, they have to do things too. We're not carrying
Yeah,
anybody across, but it is an interesting,
yeah.
it's a very inclusive approach.
Our goal is really for our students to complete.
Hmm.
And I would like every single student that walks our halls to get an associate's degree because that's
Hmm.
going to have the biggest economic impact.
Hmm.
And after you complete, to either transfer for your bachelor's or have a job where you are making a family sustaining wage.
Yeah.
And so for us, we are focused on completion and what happens to you when you are done and where are you going and making sure you're ready for that step, which is it's a subtle change. It's not, people will sometimes ask me, and I spent a lot of my career in enrollment management and admissions.
Mhm.
It's not about just increasing your numbers. It's about doing the right things for the students. And then when
Mhm.
you do that, more people will come because we have the results and we're getting the students where they need to go. So,
Yeah. And
uh,
that longer term vision will
yeah,
play out in the end. It's not just one student, one class, one enrollment number. It's a whole.
the whole thing. And I hope, you have your associate's degree. I would love to see you come back and do
Sure.
another, maybe you want to do a micro credential in music therapy
Right.
after you are working because music is your passion, or that we're here and that you were the first person you think about. So, because, I think about my own career. My niece actually sent me a WhatsApp over the weekend that she was having a debate with my brother. And she was like, how many years did you spend in school?
Mm.
No, but like, you keep coming back because at different points I needed to learn different things.
Yeah. And you absorb it differently and you retain it differently.
Yeah.
I mean, just
And
as you grow, your mind is different and it's the fertile ground is
yeah,
evolved in its own.
you
What was
know,
the answer? How many years? What
I
was
don't, I lost count. It was a lot, but I was like, and then I'm like trying to, like, I
You're like,
don't know.
it doesn't matter. It's fine.
Yeah,
But you also said you loved it, right? Like you
I did
wanted
love
to
it.
learn. Yeah, you
I would
wanted to do
do
that.
it. I mean, I say to some of our faculty here, our chair of the art department swears he can teach me how to draw. I was like, I don't know about that, but I think it's good to keep learning.
Yeah.
And when it can fit into your life
Hmm.
without disruption, we've done our job.
Yeah. I love that. You mentioned a little bit about the employers and about wanting to make sure that they were aligned for that. So if an employer is listening and thinking about their current workforce and how to possibly direct them, I'm curious about your advice, but I also have another tie-in for the last thing that you had said about the associate's degree. So I think sometimes um, colleges get a bad rap, right, for saying like degree versus not degree and for giving that impression. What I think I heard you say was, we're focused on some of the economic outcomes because we know that community colleges change lives and can change financial lives. So that is a piece of it, right? The focus on that. And then I would say the other piece I value about Ulster and many of our partners is that they're also meeting you where you are with those micro credentials. So it's
Yeah,
not an all or nothing. It's not a goal.
it's not. It doesn't. It can be a both and.
Mm-hmm,
So it's that you can do it in bites
mm-hmm,
of education if that works for you.
yeah,
But I believe that we want to get everybody, because again, thinking about the community and economic development in jobs with family sustaining wages, we all benefit from that.
yeah,
So it doesn't have to be today or tomorrow,
right,
but like, we are here when you are ready, and there are ways to do it slower and faster.
yeah.
And I think that's really key.
Yeah. If and when you want that, the door
Yep.
is open, the
And you
access
can
is,
do it.
and you
I
can
think,
do it.
there are a lot of people, and especially now, you say, college isn't for everyone. And I
Right.
think there are probably people listening who say, well, I don't think college is for me. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe not your idea of what
Mm-hmm.
college is. Like, college is so broad. I mean, it can
Right.
be manufacturing and robotics. It's
Right.
not just
Yeah.
sort of what you had in a K-12. And I worry, when college is not for everyone, you are sort of making decisions about people's economic futures,
Yeah.
because you have better economic outcomes with credentials after secondary school. So don't sell yourself short,
Yeah.
and I mean, there is probably a kind of college that works for you, and you can do it. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of that public discourse
Mm-hmm.
is more about limiting access than expanding access. And I'm like, give it a try. You never know. You
Yeah.
could be really good at something that you never even thought of.
Yeah. I am helping a family friend right now, a 21-year-old gentleman who was set to play football in college and hurt his knee before he even started and just said, well, I'm just not going to do it. And then did a couple of false starts and just said, I can't do it. So we've been talking for a couple of months, and my point to him was, if this is something that you wanted to do at some point in time, there are people who have a less IQ than you who have done this and succeeded and went on. There are people who have less, whatever, fill in the blank. It
Yeah.
is doable. The programs exist. The help is there. The resources are there. If you don't want it, if you don't need it, if that's not the path you want, fine. But he's been, for the last 3 years just doing not just, but having a very good manual labor job, and very proud of his very good manual labor job, but also very early on recognizing this is physical on my body and my intellect isn't really getting, where it needs to be either. So we've been having those conversations like you can just try. Just try.
Yeah. And coming at it with the pieces you need to know when in
Mm-hmm.
your life. Like there's a young person who is close with us, and he was like, no, I don't. And he opened up his own business and he's doing really well. And I'm there,
Right.
at some point, good to take a bookkeeping class.
I
Like,
was going to
let's
say the
do,
exact same thing.
it doesn't have to be what you thought you hated about high school.
Right.
Uh, and I think, we learn at different points and we're ready at different points, but don't think that you can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a path, there's a program. If that's what you want and that's how you do it. And always, maybe not now, but doesn't mean not never.
Yeah,
Doesn't
exactly.
mean not never. Okay, so thinking about the employers who might want to encourage, particularly Ulster County employers who want to encourage their workforce to possibly participate in the Reconnect program or any other way. What thoughts, advice do you have for employers who are thinking about this now?
I think one of the most powerful things you can do for someone who works for you is to say to them, you should think about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about it even in like when Cindy told me, you should think about being a college president. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you need someone else
Yeah.
outside who sees something that you may not be seeing that's right in front of you.
Yeah.
And I would say if you're an employer who would like employees to think about it, reach out to the college. We are doing, information sessions. If you have a cafeteria or a lunchroom, we'll come
Mm-hmm.
and sit and talk to people. But I think the most powerful thing is to say to someone, you can do it. Because
Yeah.
I guarantee somewhere along the way, someone told them they couldn't do it. And that has
Agreed.
stuck.
Agreed.
And having those words in our head. And I think that, as you said, when I went back to school while working full time, my manager said, I think this is important and
Mm-hmm.
you got my support and come to me. And, there are times when I was like, I need to unexpectedly take a day off because we have a big final and I don't feel like I'm ready and I got to study
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
But to have someone who was like, you can do this. And it was, I look back on it and it's not like they didn't change my schedule. They didn't
Right. Right.
do that, but it was just, you can do it, and would ask, how's it going? Like, what are you learning?
Right.
Sometimes we talk about stuff, sometimes we didn't, and just saying that's great. I think for me, when I was a student, I'd be interested to hear your experience
Mm-hmm.
as one. Those were the most powerful things. And even having like your boss say, oh, I hated
Right.
accounting, but
Yeah,
it's a
absolutely. Yeah,
good
I
skill to
had that
have.
exact same experience. I really did. I think in my early years, I don't think a lot of people told me I couldn't do it, but they didn't know to do it or not do it. I did have, one guidance counselor who pretty directly said I couldn't do it, but most of the
Yeah.
time it was just not discussed. It was not relevant. But the very first person who said that, I mean, I can still hear it in my brain today. And
Yeah.
then another person when I was, in getting my undergrad who said, you'd be a great adjunct professor. And I literally was thinking, I don't even know what those words mean. And I and,
I
and
had,
I was just
I,
like, I don't know what that means, but I'm gonna go home and Google it. And
what, I had
those
a,
are the connections.
yeah. And it's so funny. One of my mentees when I was here at like came in and said, can I ask you a question? I'm like, sure. She's like, what's an adjunct? And I
Mm,
was like,
yeah.
oh, an adjunct is a part-time professor. He was like, why don't you just call them part-time professors? I was like, good point. We
It's
should.
true. It's true. It's true.
But
And I
yeah,
remember actually, I was super proud because I went home I was married and adult at the time. I went home with my husband. I said, this person thought I knew that word.
yeah,
And I was like, look at that. And I felt very good about that. But it pushed me to the next level when I was ready and the bank offered some, tuition reimbursement. And I was just like,
yeah,
I'm kind of interested in going a little bit further. And if I get my master's, I could teach at this level. And they said, yeah, I think you could do that. And that person, and just saying it, I wrote that down. Actually, you should think about this. I like
yeah.
that as,
That was it's the most powerful thing, and like a lesson that I have learned to always like I would have never, years before. So when I see people, I mean, I also say to people, you should think about going for that promotion. You know,
right.
you should, what would it take to get you there? Have you thought about doing this? Because it is so powerful. And I think especially for women,
Yeah.
um, because, it you just,
Yeah, there's still the innate
it's there.
second guessing that
Yeah.
says, what if it doesn't work? Or
Yeah.
what if I fail? And,
Or I can't do it all because I haven't done it already.
right, I know. Yeah,
um, so I think that's the most powerful step. And then
yeah,
to say along the way, how's it going? You
yeah.
know,
And
uh,
to show interest and to
yeah,
care. And whether that's, going in the lines of an associate's degree, or if it's just, not just, but if it's non-credit, if it's
apprenticeship,
micro
or
credential
if
or
it's like
apprenticeships. Yeah,
three courses in a specific subject area because it's an interest and would help, whether it's like a bookkeeping. Let's use
yeah,
that as
yeah,
an example. I'd like to do the bookkeeping certificate.
yeah,
Okay, do it. Like
right.
it can be smaller bites.
Yeah. And when you're flexing those muscles in your brain, more things are, available to you. Just like now you're thinking of another way of looking at things instead of just kind of getting stuck and feeling like you're limited, whether you're limiting yourself or you feel like someone else is limiting, you don't necessarily need to be limiting. I really appreciate your time. I want to make sure, is there any other things you just like our audience to know, our members to know about Ulster, about its commitment to the workforce and economic development, any of the things?
We, we are here to serve this community. And I think Reconnect is really powerful. And even if, let's say you're listening to this and saying, oh, I don't want to do like IT or manufacturing,
Right.
call us. There
Yeah.
are the Ulster Community College Foundation budgets almost $1 million in scholarships every year. So even if it's not Reconnect,
Right.
um, so many of our students go tuition free, and we are happy to help. There is, you could just email esc@sunyulster.edu with a question and we will reach out.
Okay. No, I love that. And I think just starting those conversations is probably the first next step that
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
I
It's
really love
exciting.
working with you guys. I really
We
do. We
love
really
working with you
appreciate that.
too.
We do. We appreciate it. I love what you're doing. And thank you so much for making the time and for hopping on with us.
Oh, it was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Buckley.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Manufacturing Matters, brought to you by the Council of Industry and sponsored by PKF O'Connor Davies, accountants and advisors who understand the unique challenges and opportunities in the manufacturing sector. We hope you gained valuable insights and inspiration from today's discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform.